My name is Kyle Lopinto, and I am the studio safety tech, and I teach students how to use the tools, but I do a bunch of other stuff, and I kind of work with them in a bunch of other ways. So there's the drawing on the wall, and then there's the kind of the sculptural part, and it's one piece. It would be kind of figural, but also like something that would feel like maybe something that you're kind of hiding yourself behind as you kind of witness the eye part of it. And that's what the title is. Skeletal Phobia is like fear of being like watched or kind of observed. The biding time is kind of like this part of it where you're kind of like waiting to either to not be observed or for an opportunity to kind of extricate yourself from it. I'm hoping that like when people kind of witness this part of it, there's like a figural part of it, but there's also like evidence of someone kind of waiting here. As initially conceived, it was very basic of just like eye object that's kind of like a screen or like a figure. I usually have like a genesis of an idea and then like everything around it just comes from, because part of my process is like I don't buy anything. It's just kind of like I start with whatever initial materials, and then I kind of acquire more things as I'm going through the process of putting it together. As I make it, like other kind of elements kind of suggest themselves, and then they get kind of added in. So the idea of anxiety or kind of distrust or kind of pushing against being observed it's an idea I have made work about it before, and I've kind of been wanting to make it. When I thought about the idea of visibility, I thought about like, it's not purely a positive thing. Like it's good to be visible to the people around you and to get recognition for the things you do. But there's also the flip side of visibility is things can start being like kind of like asked of you, their expectations around what you can and can't do, what you should and shouldn't do. In my mind, that is contained in this partially. So that's kind of how it relates to it. My process and like how I kind of think about the world and how I engage with it hugely informs my practice and how I work. When I became an artist, when I started having an art practice, there was always that tension between what the kind of the larger modern world asks of people. Like, I don't want to say just conformity, though that is part of it, but like, you know, as individuals, we kind of were raised to be a certain way, to try to pursue what it means to be kind of like a successful person, doing things in such a way that you're always kind of like being able to justify yourself, being able to justify your actions, your decisions. And then there are these huge forces, even outside of that, huge economic forces that like, you need to be able to get a job, you need to be able to work in a certain way to make a certain amount of money. Those are the expectations, but they're also like real material concerns. In my mind, pursuing art is a way to reclaim something of yourself outside of all of those forces. Inevitably, those forces will leak back in because they're all consuming. We're totally like submerged in those forces basically at all times. Especially that initial decision to kind of pursue it. Like, I mean, I was, at the time, everyone around me was telling me not to do it and like not to make it all about myself, but like, I think that's true of a lot of people. You know, when you're in your teens and 20s and you're trying to figure out what is it that I'm interested in? What is it that I'm trying to do with my life? What can I live with? There are forces that are kind of within you that you kind of have an idea of what you want to do, but there are all these other forces outside of you who are constantly trying to mold you in a way that those things are either secondary or they should be actively like, that's baloney, that is not something you need to worry about. You need to worry about all these other things that, like, while technically true, you do have to worry about those things. To make your life all about submitting to those economic forces, it's a way of just like destroying your soul. In my practice, I refuse to buy anything because the anxiety around obtaining money, using money, and I think I'm not alone in this, I find it to be kind of awful. I find it to be like soul-sucking. It's just the worst. And as much as I can remove this process from that way of thinking, the better off I am. We live in a world of material abundance. Like, there's so much stuff. I don't need to pretend like my personal taste as far as like, oh, I need to have the perfect XYZ material to do whatever. I think that idea is an illusion. There's so much around, I can just, it doesn't take long to find the things that I need to be like the material reflection of the idea that's kind of existing in my head. We've had a few faculty shows. I think this is, I want to say the third one. We do them relatively often. I guess we do them every 2 years, but I'm glad that we do them that often. And I wouldn't mind if we do them more often. I feel like students have an idea of what our work looks like. I mean, I'm sure you can go on the internet and see pictures of our work, but it's not the same as seeing it in person. And then like something that I feel like is underrated is to be able to see your professor who's an artist be physically present with their work and like to see how they physically interact with their work. Yeah, no, I've seen a lot of cool student work. It's great. It's part of what I love about this job, to see students start kind of thinking about art one way, especially when it really works out, to see them do something that's like totally different from what they kind of initially started doing. But as much as I can help students kind of through that process, it's so like kind of viscerally satisfying, especially like to the degree of what I was talking about before as far as my process. I feel like that's something that a lot of people struggle with. Even if they don't necessarily put it in the terms that I put it in, we try to like please the people who are measuring us, like, if they're handing out a grade or giving you a job or a position or whatever, subconsciously or consciously figure out what it is that they want from you, and then you try to do that. And if you're doing that, you're just you're chasing your tail. You're not getting anywhere. And as much as I can see students kind of slowly extricate themselves from that, specifically when it comes to their art, but just in general, like extricate what it is they're trying to do from that mechanism of always trying to figure out how it is they're being measured and try to be measured in a way that seems like advantageous to them, or like just basically doing things kind of like the right way.